Hello everyone, and welcome back to Be Like Christ for our 5-minute Bible studies. Today we're in Acts chapter 15. It's been a couple days, and the reason for that is because I've been working diligently on the book that's going to contain all of these outlines. And for the first time, I'm going to be able to do a hardcover book, which I'm excited about because I think it suits this information well. So watch out for that in the next couple months. I'll put a link down in the description when it's available. For now, you can get the digital copy of the outline that you're going to see up on the screen at the link below on our website, 2BeLikeChrist.com. So Acts chapter 15, let's talk about it. When did the events of this chapter take place? We're going to talk about a council that happened in Jerusalem. And this probably occurred about 48 AD. After the council, Paul and Barnabas are going to go back up to Antioch in Syria, kind of their hometown. And they're going to stay there for a while, probably between the years 48 and 49 AD. As far as our characters, we've got Paul, also known as Saul. He was an apostle who started a lot of churches around the Mediterranean region. Barnabas, he was Paul's friend and fellow worker. We have a group of Jews that were part of the, quote, Pharisee party. These were believers who insisted that Gentile converts to Christianity needed to be circumcised and to obey the old Jewish religious laws. We have Peter. He's mentioned again here in chapter 15 as part of this council. He's one of the original 12 apostles, and he's the one who went to the Gentiles first at Cornelius' house when the Holy Spirit fell on them and the gospel, the invitation to join the kingdom of heaven was open to the Gentiles. And then we have James. This is not James the apostle because he died in Acts chapter 12, if you remember. This is probably the son of Mary, the brother of Jesus. Where did these events take place? Well, as always, we have our handy map on the outline, which you can see above me. Acts chapter 15 opens in Antioch in Syria, where Paul and Barnabas were working with the church. A council of disciples and elders and apostles was later gathered together in Jerusalem to settle a debate regarding circumcision. And if that sounds weird, just hold on a second, we'll explain more. And now for our outline of this chapter. The first section, verses 1 through 21, there's a disagreement about circumcision in the church in Antioch. Now you might be like, why circumcision? If you grew up in the church, maybe you've heard these stories before, you'll know what this is about. But if you haven't, this sounds really strange. Circumcision was part of the requirements of all Jewish men under God's old law. It was a sign of the covenant that God had made with the Jewish nation. So that's what it's about. That's where it comes from. But there were some men from Judea who came north to Antioch in Syria, and they were teaching that all believers, whether you were Jew or whether you were a Gentile, you needed to be circumcised in order to please God. Paul and Barnabas disagreed with this. They said the Gentiles don't need to be circumcised, but they couldn't resolve the issue there. There was still a lot of contention. So the church sent Paul and Barnabas to Jerusalem to seek the counsel of the apostles and the elders. Now, when they arrived, the apostles and the elders, they gathered to consider the matter, and several people got up to speak. Peter got up to speak. And he told the council, recounted to them the events of Acts chapter 10, how God had sent him to Cornelius' house and the invitation to the kingdom of heaven was offered to the Gentiles. And his recommendation or his suggestion was that the yoke of the old Jewish religious law should not be placed on the Gentiles. There was no need for that. Next, Paul and Barnabas, who had themselves done a lot of work among the Gentiles on their first missionary journey, they got up and they recounted all that God had done through them in the Gentile world. Finally, James spoke to the council and he told them that the Gentiles should not be required to keep the law of Moses or to be circumcised. That was not necessary to please God. He advised only that the Gentiles should abstain from a couple things, quote, things polluted by idols, sexual immorality, things strangled, and from blood. And now that a decision had been made, that leads us into our second section. The decision is sent to Antioch in a letter. This is verses 22 through 35. The apostles and the elders chose a few men of good reputation, Judas and Silas, and they sent them with Paul and Barnabas to Antioch in Syria to deliver their decision to the people there. The letter that they carried stated that the apostles, the elders, and the Holy Spirit decided that the Gentiles should not be burdened by having to keep the Old Testament Jewish religious laws. And when the congregation at Antioch heard this, they were happy about it. They rejoiced and they were encouraged. And Paul and Barnabas stayed in Antioch teaching and preaching for quite some time. That is until our third section, verses 36 through 41, the return to the mission field. So after, quote, some days, we aren't exactly told how long that was, Paul and Barnabas decided to return to the churches that they had started on their first journey to encourage them and to strengthen them. But they were divided over letting John Mark accompany them again. Because if you remember on their previous trip, John Mark had left them and returned to Jerusalem when they were in Pamphylia. Barnabas wanted to take him, Paul didn't. And in the end, Paul and Barnabas decided that they were going to separate. Barnabas took John Mark and they went to Cyprus. Paul took Silas and they went throughout Syria and Cilicia, strengthening the churches. And now for our application. God doesn't always drop the answers to difficult questions in our laps. Even the apostles had to debate and to discuss and discern and seek wisdom from God and from the Holy Spirit in making some decisions in the early church. God hasn't given us the answer to every hypothetical problem, dilemma, question that may arise in the modern church, but He has given us guidance in His Word, which contains the principles that we need in order to make wise decisions that would align with His will. And of course, He tells us that we can come to Him in prayer, ask Him questions, ask for wisdom, and that He will give it.